Prime Field.
6 players in double figures, 104 points, 18 made three-pointers. On November 30th against Xavier, the top-ranked UConn Huskies did more than win a game. They unveiled a blueprint, a rotation that no longer leans on a fragile core of 6, but on a full-scale bench unit capable of overwhelming opponents in waves. Welcome to Prime Field. This documentary examines a single central question. Has UConn's true championship edge in 2025-26 shifted from star power to structural depth? Across November, the evidence points in one direction. The Huskies have moved from what was once described as a precious 6 to a legitimate 9-player system. The Xavier blowout and the narrow possession-by-possession win over Michigan tell the same story from 2 very different angles. One game shows what this bench looks like at full capacity. The other shows what happens when every possession matters. Together, they define the depth charge, a rotation built not just to win in November, but to endure the pressure, attrition, and unpredictability of March. In recent seasons, UConn's ceiling has often been set by its health. A thin rotation magnified every injury, every foul, and every cold shooting stretch. When a key starter sat, the system bent under the weight. The 2025-26 roster marks a clear departure. The defining feature of this group is not just talent at the top. It is the ability to play 9 genuine contributors without abandoning identity on either end of the floor. Starters like Sarah Strong and Sarah Williams still anchor the structure, but around them, the staff now deploys a bench that offers real scoring, rebounding, playmaking, and defensive coverage. Allie Ziebell, Ashlynn Shade, Jana El Alfy, KK Arnold, Blanca Kenyones, and Gandhi Malu Mamel do not simply buy time. Their minutes carry strategic weight. The philosophical shift is simple. Bench minutes are no longer a holding pattern. They're a weapon. Nowhere is that more visible than in the Xavier game, which serves as a working model of UConn's new depth framework and sets the stage for how this roster intends to operate at full strength. Against Xavier, the numbers tell a precise story. UConn 104, Xavier 39. 6 Huskies in double figures. 18 made three-pointers on 50% shooting from beyond the arc. Sarah Strong led with a balanced line, 14 points, 8 assists, and 6 rebounds. Her production shaped the game, but did not dominate the box score. Ashlynn Shade matched the 14-point output, hitting 4 three-pointers on 4 of 11 shooting. AZ Fudd added 12 points, knocking down 4 of 7 from long range. Kaylee Heckel joined them with 10 points and 7 rebounds. The significance lies in the distribution. Xavier never had a single offensive focal point to load up against. Every defensive adjustment exposed another threat. With UConn reaching a season high in made threes, the spacing and ball movement created an offensive symmetry that removed the need for a singular go-to scorer. This was not a star-driven eruption, it was a system-driven performance in which starters and reserves blended into a continuous offensive pressure. Within that system, one bench player in particular illustrated how far the rotation has evolved from last season's inconsistent second unit. That player was Alli Zabel. In just 16 minutes against Xavier, Alli Ziebell scored 16 points. She went 5 of 8 from the field and 5 of 7 from three-point range. Her impact was compressed and decisive. In the third quarter, Ziebell connected on 4 consecutive three-pointers in roughly a 2-minute span, including 3 from the corner. That sequence extended UConn's lead to 48 points through 3 quarters and effectively removed any competitive tension from the game. Ziebell's role in this context is not symbolic, it is functional. She represents the bench as an independent offensive engine. Her shooting does not merely sustain the lead built by the starters, it expands it rapidly. This stands in contrast to the 2024-25 model, when bench minutes often coincided with offensive stagnation. In those stretches, the ball stopped, spacing tightened, and possessions became about survival until starters could return. Now, with a player who can step on the floor cold and immediately alter the scoreboard, bench units no longer operate as placeholders. They operate as extensions of the core system, capable of producing their own decisive runs. Around Ziebell, other reserves contribute in more subtle but equally critical ways, especially in the front court, where Jana El Alfy's role has undergone a clear redefinition. Against Xavier, Jana El Alfy's stat line was modest. 9 minutes, 3 points, 0 of 1 from the field, 3 of 6 at the free throw line, and 2 fouls. On paper, it does not resemble a headline performance, but her function inside this rotation is less about box score volume and more about structural protection. Last season, across 40 games and 27 starts, El Alfy averaged 5.0 points and 5.1 rebounds, with multiple double-figure scoring nights off the bench. The 2025-26 version shifts that emphasis. Her value lies in absorbing minutes in the post, battling physically with opposing bigs, and allowing starters like Sarah Strong and Sarah Williams to avoid unnecessary wear and early foul accumulation. At 6'5", with the physicality to hold position against strong interior opponents, El Alfy changes the calculus of in-game management. In prior years, a third foul on a key front court starter often triggered crisis rotations and compromised defensive schemes. Now UConn can extend defensive integrity without overextending its stars. Against Xavier, the opponent's modest post-attack provided a controlled environment to test those lineups. The result was a bench front court that preserved the paint, while allowing the coaching staff to explore combinations without sacrificing stability. The same logic extends to the perimeter, where role fluidity has become a defining trait, most clearly seen in Ashlynn Shade's dual identity as starter and super sub. Ashlynn Shade's 14-point outing against Xavier, built on 4 of 11 shooting and 4 made three-pointers, illustrates the perimeter versatility that supports UConn's depth thesis. She played 21 minutes as a starter, yet her role was not to dominate the ball. Instead, Shade's value in that game came from spacing and defensive versatility. She shot 4 of 7 from 3 in the first half, stretching Xavier's perimeter coverage and forcing late reactive rotations. Her 2 fouls across those 21 minutes ensured continued availability without the strain that often accompanied heavy starter workloads in past seasons. Shade's status within the rotation is fluid. In some matchups, particularly against opponents with weaker perimeter defenses, she fits seamlessly into the starting 5. In others, against more physical interior-focused teams, her profile is well suited to bench spark duty, entering as an offensive jolt rather than a constant presence. This capacity to slide a player between starter and reserve roles without breaking rhythm is central to UConn's current depth. It ensures that lineups can be tailored to opponent strengths and weaknesses, rather than dictated by necessity. That flexibility became even more critical in a very different setting. A 3-point game against a top 10 opponent, where every foul and every rotation decision carried direct consequences. That test arrived in the 72-69 win over Michigan. Against 6th-ranked Michigan, UConn's depth was tested not in a blowout, but in a tight possession-driven contest. The final margin was 3 points. Every decision mattered. Sarah Strong played the full 40 minutes. She committed no fouls in the first half, none in the third quarter, and finished with just 2 fouls, both in the fourth as Michigan sought to extend the game by sending her to the free throw line. That level of discipline is individual, but the context around it is structural. In a thinner rotation, the risk of early fouls would have forced the staff into conservative substitutions, pulling Strong from the floor at critical junctures. In this roster configuration, the presence of front court and wing depth reduces the pressure to react to every whistle. Ashlynn Shade logged 31 minutes against Michigan with only 2 fouls. Sarah Williams played 24 minutes, also with just 2 fouls. Bench options, El Alfy, Kenyona's Heckle, provided a safety net. Even when they did not absorb large minute totals, their competence gave the staff flexibility. On the other side, Michigan's rotation strained under different pressures. Top reserve Jana El Alfy played 26 minutes and picked up a single foul. As the game wore on, the Wolverines turned to freshman Kendall Dudley, who accumulated 2 fouls in 19 minutes. The contrast is not dramatic on the surface, but possession by possession, the ability to manage fouls without abandoning the game plan shaped the closing stretch. UConn's depth did not just support the stars, it ensured them. That same insurance extends beyond individual games, into the long-term demands of a championship run. The last 2 seasons exposed the fragility of a top-heavy roster. Injuries turned strengths into vulnerabilities. The absence of Paige Beckers in 2024 25-4 set AZ Fudd into a dual role as primary initiator and top perimeter defender, leaving little margin for foul trouble or fatigue. The 2025-26 team is built differently. It is not injury-proof, no roster is, but it is structurally more resistant to the shocks that derailed prior campaigns. Off the bench, Zabel has shown the ability to provide double-figure scoring against overmatched defenses. Shade can deliver 14-point, 3-point games in starter or reserve configurations. El Alfy anchors stretches in the paint with rebounding and physical presence. In the backcourt, KK Arnold's 9 points, 5 assists, and 5 steals against Xavier underscore a secondary playmaking and defensive profile that relieves pressure from primary ball handlers. Quinones offers additional scoring from the wing. Malu Mamel's first collegiate points against Xavier signal yet another layer of emerging depth. The key is redundancy, and built by design rather than by accident. If Strong spends 8 minutes on the bench in March due to foul accumulation, UConn no longer faces an automatic offensive drought or a compromised interior defense. If a perimeter starter is limited by an injury or matchup, bench options can enter without requiring a full schematic rewrite. This is the depth charge. It is not a narrative about balance for its own sake. It is a structural reality demonstrated in a 104-39 blowout and a 72-69 survival test. If this UConn team reaches the final weekend of the season, the story will not be written solely by stars. It will be defined by a 9-player rotation that turned bench minutes into a championship mechanism and transformed depth from a vulnerability into a lasting competitive advantage.
Prime Field